There is a reason your heart has been feeling restless lately, and I want you to listen before you dismiss that feeling as nothing. Sometimes the soul recognizes a change before the mind can explain it. You may not know what is coming, but something in you already senses that the season you're living in cannot continue the same way. Perhaps you've been waking up with questions you cannot answer. Perhaps you've been losing interest in things that once mattered. Perhaps certain people no longer feel familiar, even though nothing obvious has changed. And maybe you've been wondering why God hasn't given you a clear direction. But what if the uncertainty itself is part of the direction? What if God is teaching you to stop depending on what you can see and start trusting what He is doing beyond your sight? Archangel Michael's message for you today is not about predicting exactly what will happen tomorrow. It is about preparing your heart for what happens when the life you've known begins to shift. There are seasons when God doesn't immediately give you the new destination because He first needs to separate you from the old identity that would have followed you there. You may have spent years believing that you have to be everything for everyone. You learned to stay quiet when you were hurt, to say yes when you wanted to say no, and to keep people comfortable, even when you were losing your own peace. You became so used to carrying everyone else's expectations that you forgot to ask what God was actually asking of you. But that is changing now. You are beginning to realize that peace is not selfish. Boundaries are not cruelty. Rest is not laziness. And walking away from something unhealthy does not mean you failed. Sometimes it means you finally listened. Michael has traditionally been recognized as a defender, and the deeper lesson behind that image is courage. The courage to stand for truth, even when truth makes you unpopular. And there is a truth you need to hear. You cannot build a peaceful future while constantly negotiating with the things that destroy your peace. You cannot heal while repeatedly returning to the same wound. You cannot discover your purpose while allowing everyone else's expectations to decide your direction. There comes a moment when you have to stop asking everyone else for permission to become who God created you to be. Maybe you've been waiting for someone to apologize. Maybe you've been waiting for someone to finally recognize your value. Maybe you've been waiting for the perfect opportunity before you begin again. But what if your next chapter does not require their approval? What if the freedom you've been praying for begins the moment you stop waiting for someone else to give you closure? Closure doesn't always come from another person's explanation. Sometimes closure comes when you decide that what happened will no longer control what happens next. You cannot rewrite yesterday, but you can refuse to let yesterday write tomorrow. There is also something you need to stop doing. Stop interpreting every delay as a negative answer. You have been looking at the calendar and thinking, "I'm running out of time." But God does not measure your life by the timeline you've created in your mind. You see the present moment. He sees the entire road. You see the door that is closed. He sees what is behind it. You see the empty space. He may see the room being prepared. So instead of asking, "Why is this taking so long?" ask, "What can I become while I wait?" That question turns waiting into preparation. Maybe this season is teaching you patience because your next responsibility will require it. Maybe you're learning discernment because your next relationship will require you to recognize character rather than appearances. Maybe you're learning financial discipline because the opportunity you're praying for will require wisdom. Maybe you're learning emotional strength because the life you want cannot be carried by the version of you that constantly doubts itself. Your preparation may be invisible, but invisible does not mean insignificant. Think about the roots of a tree. Nobody applauds them. Nobody sees them. Yet the entire tree depends on what is happening underground. Your life may be developing roots right now, and one day, what is hidden will become visible. But Michael also wants you to understand that preparation requires participation. You cannot pray for change while refusing to change the habits that keep you stuck. You cannot ask for peace while constantly feeding your mind fear. You cannot ask God for a new environment while continuing to return to the same destructive patterns. At some point, faith requires action. Make the phone call. Apply for the opportunity. Have the difficult conversation. Delete what keeps pulling you backward. Create the boundary. Start the project. Take care of yourself. Pray, then move. You don't need perfect confidence before you begin. Courage often arrives after the first step, not before it. And if you're afraid of making the wrong decision, remember this. You can ask God for wisdom without demanding certainty. Sometimes you won't know whether a door is right until you walk toward it. Sometimes you will take a step and discover that it isn't the path, and that is okay. Being redirected is not the same as being defeated. You are allowed to adjust. You are allowed to begin again. You are allowed to admit that something you wanted is no longer what you need. Growth means your desires can change because you are changing. And perhaps the biggest sign that your next chapter is approaching is not that everything suddenly becomes easy. It may be that you become less willing to live beneath your potential. You become less interested in proving yourself and more interested in becoming yourself. You stop chasing attention and start protecting your energy. You stop asking, "Do they like me?" and start asking, "Does this bring me closer to the person God is calling me to become?" That is a powerful shift. And if you are currently in a season where everything feels uncertain, don't panic. You don't need to know the final destination today. Ask God for enough light for the next step. That is enough. Now, take a slow breath and let your shoulders relax. Think about the future you've been afraid to trust. Think about the decision you've been postponing because you don't know what happens afterward. Place that uncertainty in God's hands and repeat this prayer. God, give me courage when I am afraid, wisdom when I am uncertain, and peace when I cannot control the outcome. Archangel Michael, remind me to stand firmly in truth and protect the purpose God has placed within me. Help me release what is behind me and walk faithfully toward what is ahead. Amen. Take another breath. You don't need to force anything tonight. You don't need to chase a sign. You don't need to convince anyone. Just remember that your life can change without warning, and sometimes the first sign of change is simply a new peace inside you. If this message spoke to you, comment, "I'm ready for what's next." Let it be your declaration that you are no longer allowing fear of the unknown to keep you trapped in the familiar. And if someone you love is struggling with a major transition, share this message with them. They may need to hear that uncertainty does not mean they are lost. If you want daily reminders to keep your faith strong, protect your peace, and move forward with courage, subscribe and stay connected. Let each message be a moment where you step away from the noise and remember what truly matters. And before you leave, remember this. You don't need to have the whole future figured out to begin walking toward it. The old chapter does not have to explain the new one. The people who misunderstood you do not have to understand your next decision. The opportunities you missed do not determine the opportunities still ahead. And the years you spent struggling do not cancel the years you still have to build. Give yourself permission to begin again. Give yourself permission to believe that something better can exist without knowing exactly what it looks like. Keep your heart open, keep your feet moving, and keep your faith grounded. May God give you clarity where confusion has lived, courage where fear has remained, and peace while your next chapter unfolds. May you recognize the doors that are meant for you, have the wisdom to leave the ones that are not, and have the strength to keep walking when the road is unfamiliar. Your life is changing in ways you may not understand yet. Don't be afraid of becoming someone new. Sometimes becoming new is exactly how you finally become who you were meant to be.